Hello, good evening or lunchtime, wherever you are today, and welcome to our webinar. We're going to wait a few minutes because not everybody's on board yet, but make yourself comfortable, and we're going to start in around 2 to 3 minutes. So, hello and welcome to our third webinar of our Konstru Summer Webinar Series. So, today we're going to talk about a very exciting topic. We're going to tell you how to tell the difference between two models in Konstru. And that's a very exciting topic because that's something you guys are experiencing a lot. So, in our announcement, we actually said, yeah, we're going to tell you the difference between two models. And did you ever find yourself in a situation where you wanted to know the differences between two separately modeled models? They don't share any ideas or whatsoever. And this is going to be very exciting. So you're going to learn how to tell the difference and what the different settings are and how you can adjust them. And you're going to see how we're going to exchange data from one model into the other. So we're actually going to transfer only attributes from one model into the other and merge those and then download it back into another platform. Today we're going to use SAP on the left-hand side. These are where the forces are coming from, and we're going to use Revit. Today we're going to have Jonathan and me. I'm Max, and Jonathan is going to start with a Revit model that looks like on the right-hand side, like some beams aligned there, but not very well connected. And on my hand, on my side in SAP, I will have a model that is better connected and has forces. And what we're going to do is we're going to not mess up the Revit model. We're going to not change anything, but we're going to take the forces from SAP and bring them into Revit. So, and now I'm going to hand over to Jonathan. Gonna switch the screen, if I can do that. So.
Max, don't you want to start with SAP?
Okay, I can start with SAP. If you invited me to the model, wait a second. So Jonathan invited me hopefully to a model here. Yes. I'm going to reload the page. And I'm using an account on Konstru right now. And here I can see there's a SAP model that has been created by Jonathan. Now I'm going to populate this one. So this is now currently an empty model that he just created. And I'm going to SAP now, where I have my model. And you see here we have some beams here in here. If I click one of those, you can also see that in here we get some results that I analyzed a bit earlier to save some time. And what we're going to do is upload this one to Konstru. So as you know, Konstru, you're going to run it from the Tools menu. I'm going to run Konstru, and I'm going to select my SAP model, which is in here. And now I can update Konstru. But now for uploading forces, keep in mind that you have to check the checkbox saying upload analysis results, here axial, shear, and so on, with each member. And I'm going to select a load combination. In this case, there's only one in my model. It's called my combo. I'm going to say update. And now Konstru is going to build a comparison between the model on the server and this model, and it's going to tell me that 21 elements will be added. There's a grid line coming in, beams, and load patterns, load cases, load combinations, and so on. And the forces are included with the members. Now I'm going to hit Finish Update and click View Model. And this takes me to the server, and then I can see my upload online. And in here, we're going to see this is the model that I just uploaded with those beams. You can also see there's some different section sizes in here. Some of them are pipes, some of them are W sections. And if I click one of those members, I will see this will change in by next week. So we will have a nicer table here showing you the forces. But here you can see actually P and V2 and so on, all the analysis results we just had in SAP. And now this model has been uploaded, and now I'm going to hand over to Jonathan because he wants to merge that into his Revit model. So I'm going to change to presenter.
All right. Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I just got your model, which was uploaded a minute ago. I'm actually, I can show you already the preview of what we'll see next week. So when we select elements, I can actually see down here all the forces. And so my goal for today is that I have a Revit model that is geometrically similar, but it's not the same. And my goal is to take some of the force values that Max calculated in SAP and make them show up on a drawing in Revit. And so the first thing I do is I'm going to review these, and I'm going to see that actually the forces don't seem to be rounded, I would like to round them to the nearest 100, for example. So the first thing we're going to do real quick is bring this into bring this into Excel. So I'm going to open Excel, launch Konstru. I'm signed in with the same account, the Konstru demo account. Select my SAP model here and download it into Excel. And then I'm going to go and explore the beams, and we can see all the forces nicely lined up here. And what I'm going to do right now is take maybe the V2 start and round it. So let me just create a new parameter. Actually, so let me just switch over to Revit. So in Revit already, I have this pretty messy model here. But this is what Revit models look like, and it's fine for drawing production. It's not fine for analysis often enough. But so anyway, this is my messy Revit model. But what I do have in Revit is a parameter called factored vertical shear start and factored vertical shear end. So my goal is right now to take that variable name. I'm just going to copy it from there. And so I'm going to create a new parameter in Excel called factored vertical shear start. And I'm going to take the that value and round it a bit. Equals this value, actually round. So actually, if I don't, so what I did here is I have an empty cell. So I'm just going to write a comment here, for Revit param. So if we don't write anything in the first row, in the header row, then it's going to get ignored during the upload. So here's my rounded value. So I'm basically creating a new attribute right now called factored vertical shear start and round all the values. So let me upload this into the submodel, update Konstru. We will call this rounded shear force. value. So now it just downloaded the model from the server, it compared it, and it's telling me that 12 beams are being modified. And it's telling me that we added a new parameter called vertical shear start. So that's what we expected. Now we're uploading this. When I press done, so this is our preview account. So and I actually have to refresh it. If I was in the deployed account, it should automatically update. But so now we can see that there's a new, a second history tab now, and this one here now says that 12 elements have been updated. So if I go to the change view, for example, you can see 12 elements have been updated, 10 are unchanged, so all the groups and load cases and grids are unchanged. So that's fine, this is what I expected. And the next thing I want to show now is to take only the parameter value and bring it into Revit. So the first thing I have to do is I have to upload my Revit model. So you can see I already created a new model and called it my Revit model. I'm going to head over to Revit. Again, in Konstru, I'm going to select the Revit model and just say update Konstru. This will only take a few seconds. So now again, heading back, and I have to refresh because I'm using a different browser today. So now we have a model in Revit, a model that we just uploaded from Revit. And you can see that it's geometrically not as clean. So what I want to do now is I want to create a merge operation. So I head over to the merge tab, and I want to select the model to merge from. So you can see currently merge from and merge into are both the same model. So I want to say I want to merge from my SAP model into my Revit model. Right? I want to merge information from the SAP model into the Revit model. So I'm going to select my SAP model as the merge from, and I'm going to select my Revit model as the merge into. You will notice that it already calculated, and it's going to tell me that it's going to just add 22 elements, and it's going to leave the other 21 elements unchanged. So this is because by default it runs a comparison by Konstru ID, but in this case these two models have never been synchronized before, and they don't share the same Konstru ID. They have different IDs. Therefore, when I run the comparison by ID, it just looks as if it's gonna just add an entire new model. So if I tell first of all, let's compare it by geometry instead of ID, it's going to start to match some elements. But you can see that it still thinks that this beam, for example, should be added because it's having a hard time matching it. So what we can do here is we can increase the geometry tolerances. The other thing I'm going to do for now is I'm going to turn off auto recalculate so that it doesn't recalculate until I tell it to. So I'm going to increase the tolerances here. This is in millimeters, so now we're about looking at a 1 foot, bounding box. So let's recalculate. So now it has found a match for every element, and the orange color now indicates that it's going to update an element. So also the other thing that we can do here is we can say, okay, we want to compare by geometry, but we don't actually want to update the geometry. So we want to keep our messy Revit model as messy as it is. We don't want to bring in the clean SAP geometry. For example, now if I were to say I only want to bring in materials, what would that look like? And if I recalculate it, it would tell me that about 8 of the beams are going to have a material change. So if I select one of the elements, I can see, I can see that before in Revit it was called steel ASTM A500, and in SAP it's called steel A992. And therefore, if I were to commit the merge right now, it would update my Revit steel material. Sorry, I have to reset this. So sorry. So this is okay. Now we're back where we were. So we want to change the settings again to 300. That was my bad. I forgot to save the settings. Okay, so so we're not interested in bringing across materials. We're not interested in bringing across geometry or names. The only thing really that I want to bring across is the profile change and the attribute which contains the force information. So recalculate turns everything orange. If I select one of these, it's going to tell me that the force, okay, as Max said, we're in the process of making our forces look better. So for the time being, you still see this array here. Come back on Monday and you'll see it presented nicer. But essentially, it's telling us that before there was no force value, so it was like not applicable, and now there is all the forces have been assigned. Also, before there was no force called factored vertical, whatever I called it, and now the value is 100. Again, this is going to become nicer. So, but you know, the reason why it's orange now is because I'm applying attribute changes. Okay, so again, so this is what I want, and again, unfortunately this also we're fixing right now, so I have to just set up the comparison one more time. So attributes, profile, and 300. Okay. So I'm going to select merge, and I'm going to say merged my SAP forces into my Revit model. So it was merged. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back into, actually let me just show you here. So what we just did was a few seconds ago we created a second version in Revit. So now we have a history of 2. If I select this, if I select one of the elements, we see now that there's you see this is the messy geometry from Revit, but now it has force information attached to it. So this is exactly what we wanted. So we just updated our Revit model with force information from SAP. So now I'm going back to Revit, and I'm simply going to launch Konstru again. I'm going to select my Revit model again, and I'm going to say that I want to download the latest into Revit. So, so it's telling me that 13 elements have been modified, and so when I press Finish Download, it's also telling me that the steel material has changed. Okay, geometry. So this was the profile that we updated. Okay, and now you can see the geometry still as it was, but if we select one of the elements, we can see that the factored vertical shear start has been set for these elements, and we can, I think we can also somewhere in here we should also see our force values, right? Sorry, my mouse is not on a smooth surface, obviously. Did they come across? Maybe I can't. Maybe I don't have the force values in the parameter settings, I guess. But anyway, so the goal was basically to update our parameter for this one value, and this is what we did today. So this is really, I think, a very annoying workflow normally, where you have a structural model that is geometrically slightly different to the drawing production model, and you want to extract certain information from the structural model and make it show up in the drawing that you generate from Revit or Tekla. So this is when the merge feature comes in. Max, are we done? Should we show anything else? This was only 17 minutes so far.
I think that's great, because first of all, I want to ask you guys, the audience, you can enter questions actually in the questions tab. So it would be great if you would send some of the questions, and we would like to answer them, as many as you can. Ask us as much as you can and about everything, because this workflow is quite complex. We know that, and we also give you personal demos if you want to about that, because it's like not something you will easily get. But yeah, ask us anything. Whatever you would like to know. I'm waiting for some incoming questions currently.
Yes.
And yes, there's one question coming in. Actually, can you only merge a single attribute from one model into the other? basically by, I think he means like by selecting the attribute. Currently you can't do that. When you merge all the attributes of the other model. So this means that if I have more attributes in SAP, they would also come into the Revit model. So it's not like there's no menu allowing you to specifically only select one single attribute to merge that across.
Oh, we should say though that other than just so you can use the merge function to only update an existing model, or sorry, to only update elements in an existing model, but you can also use it to add new elements. So actually what we didn't cover, but so Max in his submodel had a grid line, which is this green line here, which I didn't have before. And he also had a group that I didn't have before. And because we created a merge function, we actually merged any new element as well. So in this case, you can tell that, again, this is what happened when we merged our subforces into the Revit model, and it also added the grid line in this case. So you can also add new elements.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That's a good information. And I'm checking again for the questions. And there's also another question coming in. How the element ID are matched actually. To answer that, so what Konstru does, Konstru actually stores all the platform IDs. So this means it actually remembers which ID an element has in Revit and also in SAP. So if you have one model that you would download to Revit and to SAP, it would remember the IDs, and therefore you wouldn't have to merge this by geometry. In our case, we had two separate models, so they have never touched each other, and that's why we had to compare them by geometry, and ID comparisons didn't work. And this is so in this way we can compare by geometry. But other than this, usually Konstru with one model doesn't have that problem because it remembers all the IDs, and you don't have to, if you go from SAP to Konstru and then to Revit, it knows the IDs and it matches the elements. And remember, it never replaces the elements, it always updates them. So you don't have to worry that those beams that Jonathan has there, they won't be lost or anything, they're just being updated.
Another question was about the direction of geometry. So how does it compare to elements? Does it take into account directionality? Do you want to answer this one?
Okay, yeah, you can also show the feature we have for that. We have a really nice feature for that because we actually have a checkbox there that allows us to compare flipped geometry as well. If you go to the comparison settings, or for example, you would see that there, you see that checkbox? That's lovely. Yeah, so this one actually allows you to, if you have elements that are flipped, let's say start point and end point, well, in our case, I think they probably, if we're really lucky, they are even the same. But in another case, you might have endpoints and start points flipped. So in this case, it actually it compares those and finds those still as matching because it actually just compares both directions of the elements, and therefore it knows if they're matching or not. But in this case, you get a good comparison result.
And so I'm going to talk about, originally I did not intend to bring across any new geometry. All I wanted to do was to update my existing model with the force values. So I didn't want this beam to come across. So what I should have done is I should have set my filters. Okay, so to zoom out a bit, every single time that we upload or download from Konstru, it applies a certain filter setting. Let me see. So it applies a certain filter setting. In this case, there's only one filter that's called recommended upload from Revit. And if I wanted to manipulate that filter, I would essentially, let me just, because I wasn't logged in the app, so let me just go through it from here. I would have to go to my org settings and then go to the filters and then show the Konstru filters. So for example, if I didn't want to download grid lines into Revit, I would have to just clone this Revit setting and say Revit download ignore grids. And so here's my new filter that I just created. And if I click now on grids, I would basically have to just say ignore this element type. And if I had applied this filter, then it wouldn't have downloaded the new element.
So yeah, this is actually, so someone also just asked what is the difference between those filters and the merging settings. So actually this is kind of similar, or not the same workflow, but kind of a similar workflow. So what you can actually do is, in this case, you can achieve kind of similar goals, because you could also just, for example, Jonathan could have set up his filters entirely to Konstru to Revit download and uncheck everything but the attributes of, for example, the beams, and then it would have brought the beam attributes across. And there, actually, in the filters that I was just realizing right now, you could even specify the single attribute you want to bring across. But yeah, in this case, this would be something similar, like a merge, but it would be without a nice 3D preview, and you wouldn't have all those features, but you would see in the staging dialog what will change and things like that. But it's kind of a similar thing in the end. So are there any other questions popping up? Let me see. Yes, someone is asking us again what platforms Konstru works with, because it looks like it works with SAP and Revit. That's fine. Yes, you can also use it with other platforms. We actually support a large variety on platforms. Here, great. Jonathan is showing them just right now. And so we have eTabs, Excel, Grasshopper, RAM, Revit, SAP 2000, Tekla, and Dynamo as well. Between all those platforms, you can send information across and update your elements across, and also, of course, do what we just did. Like, you could also upload your forces from RAM, for example, and then bring them into Revit. So that's the same workflow, basically, just with other plugins that we support. So, any other questions popping up?
Maybe I should actually zoom out one more time. So our webinar was called "How to Tell the Difference Between Two Models." So we did this, very quickly on a kind of a not so nice looking, or on a very tiny RAM and SAP and Revit model. But in general, for the comparison view, if you wanted to visualize what has changed between two different models. Again, we have four main colors: red if something was deleted, orange if it was updated, green if it was added. So for example, for this sample model, if I just look at what has changed from the very beginning to the very end, you can see that some elements were added, some elements were deleted. But then I can use the comparison settings to exactly specify what kind of changes I'm interested in. So if I don't want to see attribute changes and I don't want to see material changes, we can see the number of updated elements change. So if I turn on attributes, all of a sudden twice as many elements have been changed. So it's really up to you to define what makes a change. Am I interested if somebody changed the name of the beam? Probably not. So I can just turn that off, and then I will never see any name changes that occurred on elements. So this is, I think really important. And then the other thing again that we learned today was that by default it always compares by ID. But if I have two models that have never been matched before, I have to make sure to run the comparison by geometry instead.
Someone is just asking, Jonathan, can you also export those things that we see here?
The change log?
Or like a report or something like that, I don't know. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so there are two different ways. One, like you just said, so one way, this one we showed last time in the webinar, but I can show it again, is you can, if you wanted somebody to see exactly this view, So, you wanted somebody to find out about, not about attribute changes, but about profile and geometry changes that occurred between the first upload and the last upload, which you currently have. Then I could just select it like this, and I could say create a change report. So this, by default, just takes the model name and says status update. So let's just do sample model status update. I select again the two versions, all the settings. So geometry and profile are selected, and I could just say deleted some slabs and added lots of things. So we would do this, of course, you would probably describe this better, and you would probably send the change report more often than what we did here. This was a change from August to September, but we've actually made a lot of changes in that time. So I can create this report, and sample model status update. This was the one we just created. So then I could just take this report, and basically what a report is, it takes away the selector. So I can't see any previous versions. And I can now only see exactly what the person who created the report wanted me to see. And then I could send this and invite this to other people, just typing in their email address. So, so this is one way to explain to somebody the changes that you want them to see. And the other thing is we can also download the version history log, or we can also even, here I have never done this. Let me just go back to my, oh yeah, we can, I think from here, is that right? I forget how do we download the change log?
It should be here at the top, download CSV log.
Download CSV log, yeah, that's the one. Ah, okay, this is not working, that file name. Okay, I think this was, like I said, I've never tested it.
Should be CSV or something.
Yeah, so we have to fix that. So you can actually download the CSV file, and it also just kind of gives you a history of all the commits, basically, and how many elements were added and deleted every single time that you uploaded something. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think, let me look, but I think there are no more questions. If there are none coming in, of course, you can always ask us more questions. We will answer them later, and we can send you emails about it. And we will also compile a blog post about all the questions we had here. So you will find all the questions and answers again in our blog post. And we're going to record this webinar, so you can also review that another day if you want to, and learn more about those differences between two models. And if you have any questions, ask us anytime. You can send us emails, you can Skype us, you can call us on phone. We are always reachable. We have this chat window, yes, so that's nice. We have Brad Pitt here, and you can just chat with us anytime, and we're there to help you. And yeah, try our tool and let us know what you think. Thank you, everyone, for attending today, and have a very good day and evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.